So back in the spring of first year, all the medical students get to invite their family and immediate family, extended family to come and do a day at the university where you get a tour around and you get to attend lectures. And so my family came in and my wife got to attend. And so during that, the clinical skills lab was open. And so then there's a retired radiologist that was looking for an ultrasound model, and he just picked me out and was like, I need you to take your shirt off and be a model. I was like, no way, I'm not doing that in front of all my family. But he insisted, and so I decided to go ahead and be the model and show. And then as I'm on the exam table and he's showing different structures, and then one of my buddies, his wife is a PA. She's like, I've never seen a thyroid before on ultrasound. And so he went up there and showed around and didn't say much. But then when my time as a model was over, he kind of whispered to me, is like, hey, I saw something in your thyroid. I would go get it checked out. Didn't really think too much about it at the time, but it was in the back of my mind and kind of went on with my week. And then the next weekend was actually UltraFest, which is the Loma Linda is kind of at the forefront of ultrasound education, and so a lot of educators come from all over and help teach, and the ENT surgeons from Loma Linda attended that as well. And so one of the ENT surgeons was doing an ultrasound seminar, and so after I went up and asked him, I said, hey, I've heard I have a thyroid nodule. Can you take a look? And he was more than happy. And during that, he was explaining what he saw, and he definitely saw a nodule that was suspicious for cancer. So he said that was a Sunday, and so he's like, Monday morning, call and get an appointment. We'll get things rolling. And so I was able to be seen then pretty quick after, and at that appointment, I had the biopsy, and then got the results back within a week. And so we're still talking just a couple of weeks in the spring when I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. So the difficult part, I think, and initially, is to kind of go through, this process kind of went through the stages of grief for me. So I think initially was that first week after the radiologist had said, I saw a nodule, was kind of like, oh, it's nothing, like it's fine, even though in my coursework in class we were doing the thyroid section at that time. And so some denial. But then the difficult part came when it became a lot of fear in my life of, is this going to change what I'm going to be able to do? Will I be able to be a doctor still? I didn't really know enough about thyroid and thyroid cancer to know how great the prognosis is. And so for a long time, or at least a few weeks, it was a lot of fear and thinking that the hopes and the plans that I had in my life were going to be taken away. So during that time of fear and difficulty and questioning everything and why is all this happening, what's going on, and kind of stripping it down, I think in my personality I can go through all the different contingencies and what if this happens, and what if you can't make it, then how are you going to pay back your loans, what kind of job are you going to get, and a lot of that goes all the way down to just what is all this purpose, what is all this even going to start meaning for me. And ultimately that brought me to the place of, if it's just me and God, I'm good with that. During that time, he was able to work with my schedule, and so I had spring break coming up a couple weeks later, and so we were able to schedule my operation during spring break so I didn't miss any coursework or class time. And then I'd be able to recover without missing school as well. And so that had worked out, and was able to be discharged and on the road to recovery and return to class. So now when I have follow-up appointments, a lot of times I'll be somewhat anxious going in, has the cancer recurred? And I can intellectualize it a lot in my brain, knowing the studies and statistics, but I still can feel it and get overwhelmed. And prayer has been a way that I can go in and rest in God's guidance in my life, rest that I'm within His plan, and that whatever comes, He is with me. And so it was through prayer, through time with that, getting to the root of it, that I am secure with God being enough. I think it's important because prayer brings healing in their own life, and then it also changes the atmosphere of the exam room or the operating room, wherever it may be. And so when you encounter, and this is in my own life, okay, here's a personal story. So right before I went into surgery, the nurse and the nurse anesthetist that was doing the operation prayed with me right before, and my family had left, my support system had left. I think they could see that I was getting a little more antsy and worked up, and before the sleeping meds had kicked in, they had prayed with me, and I remember just feeling so much more secure, so much more loved that whatever was going to happen over the next couple hours, that I was in God's hands and I was in the hands of people that also trusted God. So I think that's a big reason why Loma Linda has such a great culture, is because we recognize God's presence and God's working and calling in our lives. So going now after the surgery and then the recovery time, I can look back on this experience. I actually had the opportunity to share this. I helped teach the ultrasound curriculum to the first years now. And so during that, it kind of shared my story, and I started realizing how much providence there was in all of this. So I was either the last or probably the second to last student to be accepted at Loma Linda during my year. So I think just being at Loma Linda was a big God thing for me. And then now in the first year, having somebody else like choose me and make me be the model that day, and then going through it with all the timing with the surgeon, being able to have the operation and recover and not miss class, and my grades actually went up during that time. I could just see how God's hand was in all of this, and I think I find great hope and joy and being able to share that with other students now. So not example from my own life as much, but being part of Loma Linda Education, I've had the opportunity to experience prayer clinically on 2 occasions that I remember quite well. One of them is in the clinic. I had finished taking the history, and I just chiefed it to the preceptor, and would come back in, and this patient, the physician knew was open to prayer, and so feeling the call of the Holy Spirit to pray in that situation, she prayed with the patient, and the patient during that just really started kind of breaking down and crying, and afterwards, he said, how are you feeling? And he ended up saying, he's like, this is the most whole, the most understood that I felt in a long time, and the reason for that is he was a veteran, a Vietnam veteran, and carried around a lot of guilt and a lot of shame for some of the things that had happened decades ago, and he's processed it many times, but he said in this moment it was exactly what he had needed. And then the next prayer moment was in my 4th year. I was in an endocrinology clinic, and we were getting ready to do the same biopsy that I had done, and I had done a couple years ago. And then the endocrinologist that I was working with doing the biopsy could tell that the patient was just very, very anxious, not really coming to grips with what was about to happen, and so he just stopped and said a word of prayer, and then you could see her demeanor change. She was still, I think, obviously worried and fearful, but you could see that the prayer had changed her outlook on the situation, and she was going to be able to go through with the procedure.